Book tropes. They're essentially reoccurring characters, plot devices, essentially patterns that readers have seen in literature that continue to pop up as time goes on. They're inevitable because you can only write about so much, and so the same themes and ideologies tend to pop up. Now, I don't want you to think of tropes with a negative connotation, like they're always a bad thing, because most of the time people actually look for books with certain tropes in them because that's what they like reading. However, there's a lot of tropes that keep showing up that people don't like. And these happen to be the ones that I think need to just be gotten rid of a long time ago. The first one I've seen, and one that I see very often, is being evil just to be evil with no reason or motivation behind it. A good example of this is like the White Witch from Narnia. She's mean, cruel, all because of power and just wanting to control things, which, while you might look at that as like, oh, that's a motivation, she wants power, there's many ways to obtain power in her situation, yet she chooses this path for no apparent reason other than as just to further the plot. It's frustrating as a reader because you want to understand why this person's doing something. So if I don't get why someone's doing something, then it kind of just doesn't make sense. It takes me out of the book. I don't understand. So next thing you know, I'm rooting for this main character who's this protagonist who's probably trying to stop this person, and I don't even really get this other person's point of view. Like, why are you even why is this even a story? I imagine it's pretty rare, or literally not at all. Someone is just going to do something evil purely for the fact of doing it because it's evil. You typically find this in like fantasy novels because that tends to be where you find someone who's evil and someone who's good. Fortunately, I don't read a lot of fantasy. Hopefully that changes. Okay, this must be probably the most frustrating one because it's likely the one I come across the most, which is unrealistic, unsupportive characters. I read a lot of books that are like about mental health, that have to do with relationships with parents or siblings or your significant other. And a lot of times these characters are so unsupportive, it's almost funny. For example, the Dursley family in Harry Potter. They're so comically not supportive of Harry that as a reader I'm like, no one's acting like this. Like, I don't care how much you dislike this person or how much you don't care for them. They'll purposely go out of their way just to be unsupportive, when truly someone who's unsupportive wouldn't have done that in the first place. So when I'm reading about someone who's dealing with mental health issues and then their parent is just not caring at all and they're literally saying the most stereotypical things, and my character, he or she just runs out like, oh my god, my parents don't care at all. It's just dumb. It's overused. Like, give me a reason why this person's being unsupportive. Or if they are just being purely unsupportive, make it real. This one I know is a favorite among a lot of people because it's like so funny, which is the lack of communication. By this, I mean when the plot could be concluded by just communicating a little bit. Like a line of dialogue is what separates this story from not being a story at all, which is really a dumb reason for any plot to exist. Probably my favorite example of this is in New Moon when Edward leaves because he's trying to protect her and he doesn't think he's going to be safe and whatnot. But he doesn't tell this to Bella at all, so she just thinks he doesn't love her. That is this book. Why does this book exist? I swear, some of these books, people just can't communicate at all. They just do whatever they want, and then it's a 300-page book I'm reading for eventually for them to be like, "Hey, by the way, I actually did this because I really care about you. I didn't do this because I couldn't give a crap." But to give this one a little credit, it is a little funny, so it's a little less frustrating, and I kind of enjoy it a little bit sometimes. That being said, it can definitely be dumb at times. So I'd like it to just not exist. This one I hate with a passion. I do not like love triangles. I don't like any form of love triangles, but I understand people like them. There's a certain trope of love triangles that is particularly bad that I think even people who do like love triangles dislike, which is essentially when someone is in the obvious pick and this other person is just not a good person. The main character spends their whole time trying to decide between these two people when, as the reader, you know which one's the better choice. and this person is just dumb. They're like, oh well, I don't know. I don't know. There's this person's so strong and this one's so brave and kind. And you're like, no, that person is the worst person to ever exist. And this person is essentially a god. So I have to read just pages of this person being indecisive. It's not a good time. My favorite example of this, and honestly, it's not even the worst example. I'm just, I have to throw these two people in because I love the series. Peeta and Gale. Gale, he's this like really intense, angry person, and that becomes more clear as you read the series. And Peeta's just this kind guy. He's just doing his best, and he's loyal, he's supportive. And Katniss over here, why is she even talking to Gale? What is this guy? Get out of here! Get out of here! Okay, this one's a bit of a shame because I love redemption arcs. I think they're some of the most compelling stories, and I love seeing someone become a better person within a story. Now, rushed redemption arcs can be frustrating because you're rooting such a great thing. A good example of this, of a book I just read, was Bridge to Terabithia with Jess's parents. Literally through 95% of the book, they're so neglectful and they just don't seem to care at all about how Jess is feeling and his well being. And then, like, the couple last pages, suddenly they're just these caring parents and they've always cared and we're going to do better and we're going to focus on you. And it's dumb. It's dumb. You're not good parents. Now, I guess you could say this kind of falls under that unsupportive, unrealistic character. But this one's different because these people try to come back from that. However, they do it within 5 pages of something happening. Sorry, just not very well written. Like, just because you avoided this person the whole time and then suddenly you give them a pat on your back and you go, hey, it's going to be okay. You know that? I'm not going to forgive you. You still suck. There's supposed to be a buildup of character development. Let me believe that this person is truly changing. Don't just flip a coin and suddenly they're great now. Like, that's not how people work. And when I'm reading a book, I want it to be realistic. I don't want it to just be something that I'm going to question whether or not that would really happen. Okay, this one is great. Some of my favorite sci-fi books, and arguably a lot of sci-fi books are this already, is dystopian novels. One thing I've come across a lot with dystopian novels are, government systems that just wouldn't ever work. I could give you the example of like the Hunger Games and like Panem and how essentially you're just feeling rebellion with your government. So that's just never going to work out in the long run. But I think a better example is The Giver. If you're not familiar with The Giver, it's the idea that everyone needs to be the same and you're going to avoid all conflict and war and whatnot. It's supposed to be this perfect world. The problem with The Giver, though, and the idea of sameness is you're going to have curiosity and you're going to have people who are going to question why things are the way they are. And they're not going to take their medication that they're scheduled to give. And suddenly they're going to be seeing colors and everything. It's honestly surprising in the book how it lasted as long as it did. I'm surprised someone didn't already try to rebel the whole sameness thing. Like, you're telling me not a single person was like, hey, isn't it kind of weird that we're all just don't talk about certain things? And for some reason, it feels like they're kind of hiding something and we have to stay on this one little island and we don't really get to leave. But no, everyone just accepts that and does nothing until our main character goes, wait a second, because he's the receiver of memories. Which, by the way, there's been multiple receivers of memories. So you would think one of those people, if not the old guy, would have done something about this. This one I don't see as often, but I see it more often in films. But I still do see it in books, typically in horror books, where you have this main character who's usually the smartest of their friend group they're with, and they're constantly the ones who are driving the plot. Like, they want to go to this location or they want to investigate this thing because of they lost a family member or they're trying to figure out this mystery. But what ends up happening is all the characters, their friend group, just die off. And of course, they survive at the very end. But likelihood or not, you've probably come across this theme. It's so predictable. The minute I see a character who's just a little smarter than the rest of their group of friends, and each one of their friend group just represents some cliche in high school or something, I know for a fact they're all going to die and the main boy or girl, they're gonna make it to the end, and it's gonna change their life or whatever the hell. Like, mix it up, make another friend survive. Anyways, those are the tropes that I just dislike with my entire being. I hate them, and they ruin my experience with books. But as a side note, all the books I gave an example, I kind of already enjoyed. I just didn't enjoy that part of it. So at the end of the day, tropes don't make or break a book, but they can definitely damper the experience. So I feel a lot of these books, like The Giver, for example, or even in Harry Potter with the Dursleys, if you had changed them, it might help my experience a little more. But these are still great books. I appreciate you listening to me ramble on. All right. Have a good day.